we can start. So I'll start with a little story about how this whole thing, came about.
Check it out.
I was in Ibiza, where Amir lives. Amir lives in Ibiza and in Barcelona, so he spends half time here, half time there. And I met some friends of Amir who told me about him. That there's a guy who's king of Catalonia that you got meet, and so we met and we had a discussion generally about things in life, and the chess came about as a subject that he was convinced has to be taught at the university level, which got me interested in the topic, because a few years back, I had a friend visiting me, my colleague from a bank, who sent me contact details of Joël, saying that you really have to meet this guy. He's one of the smartest guys on earth. You'll enjoy it thoroughly if you meet him. And I tried to meet him, and I tried to call him, but somehow, I don't know, he just never crossed. But I remember that he was a chess grandmaster. And when Amir brought the topic of chess, I said, my God, I know a guy who's a chess grandmaster. We gotta, let's meet and talk about it. Like, how do we teach chess? And I myself didn't know anything about chess at the time the conversation took place. So I still don't know much about chess, but I've participated. So in order to have this session today with you guys, we met graciously, thanks for Amir's hospitality, at his house.
And we got drunk.
We got drunk.
And you had to drive all the way home, which is always good.
So we met to kind of ideate around how would this conversation go, and what should we cover, and how should we present it to you guys, to people who know chess and don't know chess, and how do we make it interesting, and what is for us interesting about chess. And it turns out, again, it was a great sort of time that we spent. I learned quite a few things about chess, to be honest, coming out of that conversation.
But did you start playing? No.
I started playing.
Oh, great.
Here
we go.
Well, I didn't finish even one game though. So finally, Amir went to Ibiza, and then he said he's coming back at the end of February. Why don't you call Joël and say, when are we actually going to do it? And so, as you guys know, we do this Space.Talks, or we used to do the Space.Talks very often before the pandemic. And this is our first Space.Talk since about a year, really. So, we're very kind of, it's a special moment to have Space.Talks back, and have all of you in presence here, really, and have this incredible people that I love very much, and I hope you're gonna love them after this conversation. And really,
my students hate me already. No? Joking.
Anyway, so the floor is to Amir, and if you guys don't know Amir, I know he's very modest. He's not going to talk much about himself.
I'm not modest, no. I'm the opposite of modest, no. The king of Catalonia. He's not modest.
Look him up.
No. No, it's not about me today, by the way. Yeah. It's about this guy. And again, I can tell you.
Okay, maybe you can do the introduction. Thank you.
So you got. Do we need to take care of anything? We just move on. Okay. No, how do I introduce him? I introduce him again, as Lana said, I'm modest. I'm not modest. I'm the people who know me, I'm a little bit crazy, and I don't lack of self-confidence, which is a good thing or a bad thing. So some people say I'm arrogant, and it's very, very difficult to impress me. And in the last couple of years in my life, there were very, very few people who really impressed me as a human being, as an intellect, and as someone who is so inspiring, because he actually has two sides, which is, one is he's one of the few people in the world who are a grandmaster in chess. And I think out of 7.8 billion people in the world, how many grandmasters do they exist?
Well, grandmaster is a title that you never lose.
Yeah.
So even if you're suddenly suffering from dementia and you forget how to move the pieces, you're still a grandmaster of chess.
But there are not a lot of them, no?
But active grandmasters, I would say, roughly a few hundred, like 400 or 500.
And grandmasters in total? What do you think? 1,000,
yeah,
2,000?
roughly.
So if you're a grandmaster, you are like the Yodas at the Star Wars. So there's this very, very special group of people, because that is like the highest level you can achieve in chess. I'm a okay chess player. I'm not really good, but I love chess because I learned it as I was young, and I always play it because for me it's the ultimate game. And I realized at some point that a lot of things that are happening in chess are very interesting as insights if you go through life, if you make business decisions, and so on. So as I had the chance and the honor to meet you, I said, oh my God, that is the ultimate chance to actually find out some more about the concept of chess in general, but how can you actually use it in real life? So I prepared some questions. I don't know if I would follow them because I want you to just feel free and talk. But I think the first question for everybody who don't know you is, just give us a little bit about your background, your life story, and how you came to chess, and why did you like it, and so on and so on.
Sure. Well, first of all, I'm very happy to be here and meet with all of you. I think it's a great opportunity, and it's actually I like this place very much. I think it's a very special place in Barcelona. So thank you very much, Sieta, for basically organizing all of this, but also creating this place that we're meeting in today. And thanks a lot, Amir, for all your nice words. I mean, after such a portrayal, it could only go downhill from there, but I'll do my best anyway. My path in chess started, as often it does in the family. As I briefly mentioned, I'm half Japanese, half French. I was born in Canada to make things even more complicated. My father, who's French, was a very keen chess player himself. And I was born in '73, and he was still suffering the after effects of the match between Fischer and Spassky. All of you are very young, so maybe that doesn't ring much of a bell, but Fischer-Spassky was considered the match of the century. And it was the first event that brought chess to the mainstream media. So that match took place in 1972 at the height of the Cold War. And Bobby Fischer was this incredible wonder kid who had become a grown man, and he was incredibly strong, but he was alone. He was a single chess player from the US, and he was facing the then world champion, Boris Spassky, who was the product of an entire system, the Soviet Union. And when I mean system, I mean something which was, all encompassing. So you had school of chess, you had trainers all over the country spotting young talents. And it was, at the scale of an entire, basically almost continent, really. And so chess was, very strongly supported by the state. And so it was a real shock of two countries, but also of two, personalities and two different visions of the world. And so basically, got a little carried away by the story, but the point is that my father really loved chess. And he thought, well, I didn't get to be world champion, maybe this kid can. And so he taught me the moves. And originally, it was just a chore that I did, because my father was so intent on me playing chess. But after a while, I really, started to like it. And what I didn't measure when I was small was that I was incredibly lucky to have a strong player at home. I didn't know he was strong because he was the only chess player I'd been playing with, but he was actually almost master level. And so I had private tuition from a strong player, and that in itself already gave me a huge advantage over other kids my age in France. And so I really started liking the game, actually. I remember that very well. When I started playing it in kids championships in France, and I realized that I was beating every one of them. And it was normal because I'd been given this, actual training at home, and they didn't have any access to chess.
How old were you at that time?
I was 8.
Oh, wow.
So I learned the moves of chess when I was 3.5.
At the age of 3.5?
Yeah.
Wow.
But, it wasn't very fast, obviously, at this age. And one of my first chess memories was when I was, I think I must have been 6 or something, 5 or 6 maybe. My father came home from work, and he had just bought a new chess set, but one, without the letters and the numbers on the sides. So that you don't, usually you have them printed on chess sets so that you know the coordinates of the board. But he brought one, without them. And he said, well, now imagine you're playing white, okay? You put the board in front of me, empty board. And he points to a square and says, tell me what square this is. And I just had, from memory to remember this was E4 or D5 or F2, whatever. And so this is my first experience of blindfold chess, if you will. So it's one of my first reminiscences of chess. So basically, that means that chess has been part of my life, ever since I was a very small kid. And so I would say my real career started, around about that age, 8, when I realized that it's pretty cool to play tournaments and win them. It's really a great feeling. And so I got really excited by that. And I would say around the age of 10, 11, I got really serious. I mean, when I mean serious, I was spending more time on chess than on school.
Wow.
So yeah, after that.
But you were at that time, at the age of 11, you were what? You were not a grandmaster at that time.
No.
You're young, one of the youngest grandmasters in the history. I know that. But at the age of 11, you were. Did you have a title or what? French champion or?
Well, I was a French champion of my age category. Yeah. I've been winning the French championship for 3 years, in a row. But I was, you could say, candidate master. So in rating terms, chess players have this rating system, which is called the ELO system. I was rated about 2200.
Wow!
But at the time, that was quite strong, and actually, the ELO system has been inflated since then. So it's like money. I mean, at the time, 2200 was worth more than 2200 now. But just to sort of give you an idea, I must have been in the top 100 players in my country already at that age in France. And so I started playing tournaments, adult tournaments, kids tournaments, and until I became world junior champion when I was 15, and that's a record that still stands today. Because normally world junior champions are 19 or 20, because that's an age category that goes until 20, and it's I mean, at this age, 5 years makes a big difference.
So how did you feel as you wanted the championship to be the world champion at the age of 15? How was it?
Well, I was as a kid, how you are. I mean, you just think everything's normal. I mean, I thought it was. I came and I won. Yeah, so big deal. But of course, I was incredibly lucky, obviously, because there were some players who were much stronger than me. This was still the Soviet Union, so that was 1988, and Soviet Union was the only country which had the right to send more than one representative, because they had so many strong players. So there were 4 players from the Soviet Union, and all of these 4 players became top 10 players later on in the world, and so I was I mean, they were very strong then.
But it's interesting for the people who are not really familiar with chess. So how does a world championship work? So you have a tournament with how many people? Like 20 people, 25 people, or?
So in those days, the world championship was a lengthy affair. Okay? So the whole world championship cycle was lasting 3 years. And it started at the national championships, and then the best players of each country would qualify to what they call a zonal tournament. So the world was divided in several geographical zones. Then the top players of that zone would qualify to an interzonal tournament, and then the top 8 of the interzonal tournament would become candidates, and the candidates would play matches, with each other, elimination matches, and the winner of the candidates tournament was the challenger to play the world champion for the title.
So in order to be at the finals,
to be a challenger,
you had to beat the shit out of how many people?
A lot.
Amazing. And you won every single game.
Well, no, you don't have to win every single game, but you just have to win more than the others.
Okay.
And all this while, the world champion was just sitting back and waiting for his opponent to show up.
And who was the world champion?
So in 1988, it was Kasparov already.
No, but I'm talking about junior world champion.
Oh, you meant for the junior championship? I thought you meant for the adult championship. For the junior championship, it's a one tournament, 13 games. It's played according to what is called the Swiss system, but basically it means that players with the same number of points get to play each other.
Okay.
So the more points you have, the stronger opponents you face. When I say I was lucky, I mean, specifically in the last round, decisive round, I was trailing 2 players who had half a point, more than me, and they had better tie breaks even if if I joined them. So I needed not only for me to win, but also for them to lose, and that happened in that final day. Obviously there was a fantastic achievement, and it was the first time that a French player won a youth competition. And I became grandmaster shortly afterwards. After that, and I became best player in France. And around about this time, even actually a little earlier, I had taken a decision that I needed to learn Russian, and that was specifically for chess. Because so again, taking us back to the distant past, we're talking about 1988 or basically mid 80s. Soviet Union was still there. It was almost impossible to get access to that country. My father was a chess amateur, and he also liked to collect chess books. And somehow he had managed to buy a nice collection of very good chess books, but all of them were in Russian. There was no translation available. And so I figured that if I have to beat the Russians at their own game, I have to speak their language. And so from the age of 12, 13, I started, learning Russian. Yeah. And as it later turned out, this played a major role in my life, because then later on I moved to Russia, but not related to chess. When I moved to Russia, I just was offered a job there, and actually my later career was in Russia.
So you became the junior world champion. Then you became shortly after grandmaster, and you started to really study chess the way the Russians do. And then what happened?
And then, once
you were now a professional. Can we say that you were a professional chess player? No?
I was, yeah. So I became a grandmaster at 16.
Yeah.
And the natural next step is to try to become world champion, right? Yeah. Why else would you play otherwise? Yeah. And so when I became a grandmaster, I had this important conversation with my parents, because I was due to play in this interzonal tournament I explained about, which is already pretty far up the qualification cycle. And this was a tournament with roughly 100 players, but really the top of the top. And this tournament was scheduled in June. I was also studying at school, right? And this was also the date when I had to pass my exam, baccalaureate in France. And so I told my parents, look, I don't need this diploma. I mean, I'm going to be a chess player, professional chess player. You know that already. And I told my father, that's what you wanted anyway, right? So I don't want to waste time in school. I'll just play that tournament, and we'll see what happens with studies afterwards. And they went along with it, and I think it was also a very good thing on their part, because it's not an easy decision to make as a parent. Being a chess player is it's a very unusual life. By no means can you say this is a safe choice, but they saw that I had potential there, and that I already had achieved a few things. So they thought it was worth trying. And so after that, I started playing in the top adult tournaments. And when I was and then later on, I played all of these tournaments. I was in the top 10 in the world for a number of years. This was my career until I was in my early 30s. And then I decided to make a change. And then I took as we say these days, a pivot from chess into a totally different profession. That's something that doesn't happen very often once you reach the top levels of chess. First of all, because chess is a world of its own, and it's it's a fascinating world. You travel many countries, you have friends all over the world, but it's a different world than the usual life, right?
But is it lonely to be a chess player? I mean, you have to study a lot, no? I mean, you have to practice and learn and analyze, all either by your own or with other people, but the majority of the time by your own, right?
Yeah.
So is it lonely to be a chess player?
It's an individual sport.
Yeah.
So certainly, yes, you need to practice, you need to train, but it's not only that. You also need to. The funny thing about a chess player is that a chess player is a sportsman because you have to show strong performance consistently. He's also an artist because you have to invent something. If you're not able to invent something over the board during a game, you're not going to surprise your opponents, and then you're not going to beat them, because if you just use well-known recipes, well, they know them as well, so that won't take you very far. And the chess player also has to be a scientist, because in order to become one of the top players, you need to study at home, but not just to memorize things, but to find new ideas and to experiment. So basically, a chess player's preparation is like a scientist in a laboratory, trying out new ideas, new formulas, checking if this works out or not. Spending countless hours doing this. Because most of the time is usually spent on opening preparation, because a strong opening gives you a clear advantage over your opponent.
And maybe for the people who are not really familiar with chess, what is an opening? So we will come back to the 3 phases of chess, but just from your side, just to explain us for the dumb people like me, what is opening in chess? Okay,
so opening is the starting phase of the game, and there are considered 3 phases of the game: so opening, middle game, and end game. And the opening is it's sort of, there's no strict definition of it, but the loose definition of an opening is when you have developed all of your pieces. Let's say most of your pieces have moved at least once, and this is when you start devising a more comprehensive plan to take over an advantage, and then you move into the middle game.
And just to have an understanding, how many possible openings are there?
Well, I mean, it's
or is it limitless?
It's virtually limitless, but of course, if you ask the question, how many sensible openings? Then that number,
that makes sense.
Then that number is not infinite.
But do you have to know all of them by heart?
No. Well, first of all,
you just have an idea of it, no?
First of all, you can't. I mean, let me just give you a simple example.
Sorry if I ask dumb questions, but because I'm a little bit into chess. I don't know how many people are really into chess, but it's very, very fascinating to dive into it, to the magic of the game. So if it's bothering you, it's
no, of course not.
Just go on. It's maybe it sounds dumb, but it helps us to understand the game a little bit better. Sorry.
So just to give you an idea, on the starting position, the initial position, white always starts and has 20 available moves, 20 possible moves. And then on the other side, black naturally, symmetrically has 20 ways of responding to that first move. So already after one move from each side, you have 400 different possible positions.
Wow.
And with every move, that number increases exponentially. So you're never going to be able to remember all of that.
Yeah.
But of course, once you reach a certain level, you don't need to remember everything, because there are a lot of positions which are the result of weak moves, and then you don't actually need to remember anything. You can just improvise and win that game anyway, right? But nevertheless, there's a huge amount of opening theory that you need to remember and constantly update, and that's part of the routine of a chess professional. So typically what I would do between tournaments, I would look at all the games that are being played worldwide by top players, just to know what they've been inventing, just to know just to stay abreast of all the news. And then on top of that, you need to invent something of your own for the next game. So this
what do you mean with inventing? So coming up with new ideas to surprise them, right? That is what you mean with inventing, right?
That's right. So as I was mentioning, you need to remember a lot of things, and I've never tried to count them, right? It doesn't make any sense, but this must be tens of thousands of positions that you need to remember.
Yeah.
So when you have all that knowledge, inside, I would say an average grandmaster's head, you need to find something which he doesn't know, which he's never seen before, he or she, and so it needs to be different, surprising. It need not be perfect, because
crazy, no? In the eyes of the other guys,
crazy is fine. Crazy is fine, as long as it's not stupid,
Yeah.
And so, basically, the one of the challenges is to find something new. But more than a new move, what really carries the day is a new conception, a new way of understanding a specific type of position. Let me give you an example.
Yeah.
So later in my career, when I was, I'd been a chess professional for a number of years, I became a trainer as well.
Okay.
But only for one specific player. And this was my friend Vladimir Kramnik,
who was a world champion.
Well, he wasn't the world champion then, but then he became world champion. No? Yes. And so basically, in the year 2000, we got together after a tournament, and he said, "Look, it turns out I'm going to be offered a match against Kasparov for the world title." So you remember this whole cycle I explained to you about? Mm-hmm. This worked very well until it all imploded, chess politics. Yeah. So basically, Kasparov was the holder of his own title, but he was outside FIDE, outside the International Chess Federation. So the only way he was, basically having matches against top players was finding a sponsor, and the sponsor would say, "Well, I would like you to play Kasparov," and that's how it worked. And so Kramnik said, "I'm having this match. It's going to be the most important match of my life, so I'd like you to help me." I said, "Sure, of course, yeah." And so one of the things that we did was to find the proper opening with black. So in a match against the same player, you alternate, right? You play one day with white and the next game with black, and so on and so forth. And so one of the challenges in match play is to find a proper defense when you're black, because white always starting the game, it puts you a bit on the defensive. And Kasparov was especially known for being a very aggressive player and extremely dangerous as white, because he would always look for the maximum pressure, basically. And so one of the first challenges was to find an opening that could, be problematic for him. Yes. And the way we approached this was very systematic. So we had a set of criteria. And so the criteria were that it has to be an opening which Kasparov has very little previous knowledge of. Second, it has to be an opening that Kramnik never played before, so that he has no clue that he's going to face that in a match. Third, it has to be an opening that preferably suits Vladimir's style, but more importantly, doesn't suit Kasparov's style. And finally, it has to be an opening which is hard to analyze with computers. And the reason why this last criteria was important is because during a match, so it was a 16-game match, 8 games with white, 8 games with black. And of course, after the first game with black, Kasparov would have his whole team, working day and night to find something, to find something to use in the next game. And obviously they would use computers, and lots of them. And so just by having this set of criteria, we went through, tens and tens of different openings, until finally, Vladimir said, "Well, let's have a look at this one." Now, this opening is called the Berlin Defense, and it was played in the 19th century, and it had almost stopped being played at the top level since then, because basically, the opening, right? I mean, it's just after 5 moves, you land into an endgame, and black loses the right to castle, and the pawn structure is damaged. So basically, it seems like black is just conceding from the beginning and agrees to an inferior position. But there were a number of interesting things. First of all, you translate directly into an endgame, which doesn't suit Kasparov's style. Kasparov is an attacking player. So endgame means there are no queens on the board. The queens are exchanged. And so with the queens off the board, the number of tactical possibilities diminish. And the character of the game changes. So instead of having, some lots of tactical ideas, a lot of dynamic play, it becomes more long-term, positional, strategic type of playing. And this didn't suit Kasparov's style too much. That's the first thing. The second thing was that's never been played by Vladimir before. And Kasparov had virtually no experience with it. There was only one problem, which was the opening was pretty bad, actually, in itself. You landed in a position which looked dubious, which was very uncomfortable playing. Your king was always in the middle. Your rooks never connected. But the more we looked at it, the more we understood that actually it's a perfectly playable opening, and it's got some positive sides of its own. And this is what I mean by finding a new concept. Basically, we put this opening on the map once again. And for many years it became the top opening against E4 for black.
Amazing. And then what happened? So you were a trainer. You helped Kramnik to become a world champion.
Yeah. So
and you were still playing by yourself.
Yes,
as a player.
I was. So I was training Vladimir for this match, and then a couple of tournaments afterwards as well. I remember, after Vladimir won the match, a journalist asked me, so what what makes a good chess trainer? What's the secret of a good chess trainer? And I said, it's very simple in the choice of your student. And really, obviously I helped Vladimir as best I could, but he was he is an incredibly gifted player. And the way he managed this match is just textbook example of how you should approach such matches. Because he managed to, blend it all in. So both the strategic part, the psychological part. Psychology is very important in chess as well. And so he used all of Kasparov's weaknesses. And the match actually ended with 2 victories for Vladimir, no losses, and 13 draws. And it was the first time, first of all, that Kasparov ever got beaten in the match, but also the first and only time that he never won a single game in an event.
So he was pissed off, no?
Oh yeah. Very. So after that, I kept playing as well. The year after that, I went up to the quarterfinals of the World Championship in Moscow. Wow. And then after a while, I sort of started thinking that life's too short to do only one thing, and I wanted to try something new. So yeah, I would say around 2004 or something like that, 2005, I started thinking about doing other things. One of the things I did was, together with a group of players, we founded a professional players association, basically, a bit like what exists in tennis. We did that for chess because we felt that the International Chess Federation was, too old-fashioned and was not keeping up with the times. So I was running that. I was elected president of that organization, and I organized the World Championship for Vladimir against his next opponent in Switzerland. So that was my first experience of doing something different than just being a chess player. And then eventually I got a job offer in Russia, where I was traveling to on a regular basis, and I joined a consulting firm, a strategy consulting firm. So it's a company called Strategy Partners.
Can I ask a provocative question?
Yeah, sure.
How can they offer a chess grandmaster a job as a venture capital company without any background?
Yeah.
But why did they do that?
It was not a venture capital company.
Because I'm trying to make the connection now.
Yeah.
Well, the chess, again, it's very, very interesting, and I will ask some more questions about chess. But I think it's very, very interesting to make this translation of what you have as a talent and as a gift, and wise but so helpful for your second life as a business guy or mastering life decisions. And I think that is the very, very interesting part. Sorry.
Yeah.
So why did they hire you?
So actually, it was a strategy consulting firm. So what they did was, companies like McKinsey or Boston Consulting Group. So they were doing that type of projects. So consulting clients on how to improve their performance, change strategy, open new lines of businesses, whatever. So I think you're asking a very good question. What are these maybe chess qualities that help me in my future life? Well, first of all, the image of chess helped me a lot.
Yeah.
Because being a chess grandmaster, even if you're a complete idiot outside of chess, people will always think that you're very clever, right? So,
That's true.
so that in itself is a fantastic asset. But
do you introduce yourself to people as a chess grandmaster, like just to piss them off? I mean, I would do it. Now, if I would be invited to a dinner and they would ask you, so who are you? I'm Joël Lautier and I'm a chess grandmaster. And I think there would be silence for the rest of the evening because nobody would risk to say something dumb, no? Joking. Go on, sorry.
I try to avoid it because otherwise I would always end up talking about chess.
Yeah.
I want to talk about other stuff
exactly.
as well. But so basically, I think this is one of the first things. And this was one of the reasons why they hired me in the first place. Because, there's no real correlation between chess and strategy consulting, except the word strategy makes people think that a chess player might be qualified to do this, which is not necessarily the case, but, perception is what matters sometimes. And so in this particular case, the reason why they wanted to hire me was because this was a good company, lots of Russian clients, but practically no foreign clients.
Okay.
And they wanted someone who was not Russian to present the company, represent the company towards Western clients.
Okay.
And so that was my role, bringing Western clients, and I managed to do that as well. But going back to your question, I think that there are many things that chess develops, which is I think useful. I mean, of course, it's in a way complicated for me to explain that because I was, chess is so much part of me that it's hard to imagine, oneself without it if you've always been in it. But what I would say, at a fundamental level, I think a strong chess player develops inherently three qualities. The first quality is obviously a very strong sense of logic, because chess is a logical game, and it's not mathematics, but still you need to calculate precisely, and one decision carries over to the other, and you suffer consequences of bad choices, etc., etc. So that's the first thing. The second thing, which I think is very important, is that it develops. I don't know what's the right word for this. I would maybe call it truthfulness. What I mean by that is that a chess player cannot lie to himself or herself. Never. I mean, you can, try to impress your opponent, whatever. But when you're playing a game of chess, first of all, there's no bluff, right? I mean, it's not a card game. All the information is open, right? In many other games, something remains hidden or appears by chance or luck, with dice or whatever. In chess, it's all in front of you, and so all the information you have, your opponent has as well. And this means that if you want to become a really strong player, you should always know exactly where you stand in terms of what you have calculated, what you have not calculated, what you know and what you don't, what you understand, what you're able to assess. So that second quality is important. So a chess player always knows exactly where he stands, basically. And the third quality,
know your strengths and you know your weaknesses.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Which is also applying to life, because if you're not truthful, you are running from your problems. You're running from everything away. No.
Yeah, and it makes decision making much better, because you don't try to find reasons not to do things. You just try to do them, and that's hard enough, right? And you concentrate your energy on what really is important. And the third quality, at this fundamental level, is resilience, because to win a game of chess is very hard, even from a one position. Because opponents will keep, throwing all kinds of things your way, and the game is complicated. So you can never be sure that the game is won unless it's completely obvious. And that's just inside one game. But then you have tournaments, right? You have matches, and you have to be able to rebound from losses. That's a very important quality, because I think there are few things which bruise your ego as badly as losing a game of chess.
Really?
Yes.
But why?
I've experienced that, even among people who are not chess players. So, for example, if you ask, some public figure, I don't know, politician, whatever, to play something, tennis or whatever, they say, fine. But game of chess, even if they play not too badly, they will say, nah.
Because it's an intellectual humiliation, or why?
They feel that it's sort of it's a demonstration of their intellectual abilities.
Oh wow!
Going back to the image of chess, right? I mean, obviously, chess is not a measure of intelligence. It's just a game. It's a complicated game, but intelligence is so much more than the ability to play chess. But nevertheless, when people lose a game of chess, they feel bad.
That's true. I feel really depressed sometimes, but I'm not good. So, but go on. Sorry.
And that's obviously even more the case when you're a professional, because that's what you're supposed to do well, right? And so, the ability to take this in stride, the failures, that's obviously a very important quality. And the champions are those who hate losing, but are still very strong after a loss.
Because they rebound back.
Yes, because obviously, they're affected at the moment. Well, for example, when I beat Kasparov the first time.
As a player.
As a player. Yeah, not as a trainer.
Yeah.
As a player.
And he was a world champion already.
Yes, he was a world champion. I was 21, and so he was 33.
Yeah.
And 31 actually, 31. Yes, and it was a tournament in Spain, and it was my first encounter ever with Kasparov. And I beat him convincingly with black. And well, I mean, he was really pissed to the game. There's a tradition in chess tournaments that after a game, the two players would go over the game together. It's called
to analyze
post-mortem analysis. Yes. And I cheekily offered to go through the game after I'd beaten him. I knew his answer, of course, but he said, "Nah, it's nothing to analyze." He just stormed off. But even then, after when that happens to Kasparov, then he motivates himself again for the next game, and he's actually more dangerous after he's lost a game. So that quality is extremely important.
But would you say, I mean, looking at the business world or looking at life, I mean, each one of us is different. Each one of us has a different character, has a different personality, has different, let's say, edges, right? And based on the personality and the character that we have, we are making decisions in life. Some of us are not that open-minded, maybe they are more anxious. Some of us are more bold, some of us are more crazy, right? And it also has an impact on the life that you live, right? Would you say, looking back, looking in retrospective, that the character of a chess player says a lot about how he plays? I mean, how the character is, because from my understanding, correct me when you know it much better than me, is Kasparov was playing very aggressively because he was a guy from a personality who was always bold. He was always a rebel. I mean, now he's still very engaged in the political rebellion against the system. So he was always this kind of rock and roller, and he tried to he was playing like a rock and roller. Would you say that the chess style of a player resonates with his character, or is it something which is only happening from time to time? I mean, what was your chess style, and how would you describe your character?
I think generally it entirely corresponds. This is true. So it's possible to judge a person's character by the way that person plays chess. If the person has a bit of chess proficiency, obviously, because they're not playing well enough, you can't really tell much. But so certainly yes, because you reveal a lot of yourself when you play chess, because you reveal what is your tolerance to risk. How aggressive you are, or are you more the kind of person that prefers to let the other one come at you and then respond? All kinds of things. So you definitely, character, shows off in chess. That's true. And that's why the psychological dimension of chess is so important. Other things being equal, obviously you need to have a good level technically, but if you're able to integrate that understanding of your opponent's psychology in the game, that definitely gives you an edge, because you will know which moves to choose, not because they're necessarily the best, but because they're the most unpleasant for that particular person.
But I can imagine that exactly that insight can help you now in your business negotiations, no? So you're sitting in a conference room with the company, and now you're negotiating. So it's actually kind of the same psychology, no? I mean, if you understand them and you know how they react to specific things, the way your strategy is to actually prepare it the way exactly you want to, no? Or you cannot translate it one-to-one. What would you say?
I think that you can definitely use many aspects of it. Of course, in a negotiation, it doesn't have to be, I win, you lose, right? It's there are many more outcomes possible, and hopefully not everyone has to lose in this negotiation. So I would say that what you don't have in chess, because in chess, of course, you strive for victory. In negotiations, you don't necessarily strive for victory at that particular day. Yeah, you strive for a good outcome, but you also want to build a long-lasting relationship, and you don't mind, making a few concessions if it gets the deal done. Okay, so the dynamics are different. And also because you're usually not alone. There are different stakeholders, decision makers, parts of your team as well. So it's more, in a way, it's more complex than that. But certainly there are some, chess habits that I find useful. For example, whenever I start, some discussion about a business project, I immediately try to envision, what is the end game from this current conversational situation? What can that lead to? And then you start to assess, well, how far are we from that possible, result, and what are the probabilities? I mean, is it really worth spending a lot of time, digging into this, or maybe there's some, more interesting things to do. And that's the habit of a player, because whenever a player sees a move, especially a move he didn't expect, is what's the point? What does he want to do? And how does it interfere with what I thought what I was going to achieve? Previously before that appeared on the board. So I think that's one thing which is useful. The other one, which I find very useful, is visualizing your options. So in any given situation, you have certainly one good idea, but maybe there are many more. And I've noticed, to my surprise, that in many business situations, business surroundings, whenever people hit on one good idea, they say, "Oh, let's do that," and looking no further. But maybe that's the first thing that came to your mind. Maybe if you give it 10 more minutes of thought, you find something even better. And that's something a chess player always does, because he understands that he's got a limit of time, but he's able to use that, right? And so if you find something which is good, well, maybe you stick around a little more and find something which can be even better. What I meant by visualizing is that so whenever in a starting position you have a choice of moves, for each move you have a plausible set of answers, right? And then you start mapping this in your mind, like a tree, like an analysis tree. And so you say, okay, this is my main branch. I play this move. He can play 1, 2, 3. Okay, number 1, let's go here. Against this, I have 2 or 3 interesting possibilities. And just in order not to lose yourself in the maze of variations, you sort of mentally draw this tree in your mind. Always know where you left from the main variation, and then go back to it.
And it happens how fast? In
chess, it happens fast. In other fields, not as fast.
But because your brain is kind of pre-trained during all the years that you were playing chess, so it's actually a good training in terms of decision making and actually having this mind mapping in your head, no?
Yeah, I would say that.
Not only in business things, but I'm talking about, let's say if you have to make a complex decision in life. I don't know, I want to move with my family from Russia to Spain, right? It includes a lot of parameters, it includes a lot of dimensions. So I can imagine for you, it's fun to do it, or to approach the problem, because your brain is already pre-trained, no? I'm just asking.
Yeah, no. I mean, certainly what is useful is that as a chess player, you constantly practice this, and what it helps you with is to keep information organized in your mind, quite simply. And that's the way, by the way, computers, look at chess, play chess. What they do is that they basically look at every possible variation. And for every possible variation, they look at every possible answer until, basically their calculating capacities run out. And nowadays it's they can calculate about 15 moves ahead. But then after that, it's finished. They can't find anything, they can't calculate anything more. And after 15 moves, they have to assign to every position a specific assessment, valuation. And so basically they just tag it. They say, well, in that position, I think, white is better by +1, or this one is +0.5, etc., etc. And then it compares all the variations, and the one with the highest score wins. And that's how they choose their move. So, without being so mechanical, I mean, still it's quite useful, because you have all these different options, and you say, okay, well, if I go to the end of that logic, then I'll get that outcome. Okay, I'll remember it's an interesting outcome. Now let's see if I compare it to the other ones. Maybe other ones are more interesting, and then I'll choose another one.
You were mentioning computers, and I was kind of intrigued by the whole artificial intelligence research that is happening at the moment in the world, and especially with DeepMind, which is like the machine learning department from Google. And they developed this algorithm, which is AlphaZero. And again, you can maybe explain it better than me. I'm not a techie, I'm not a really good chess player, but from what I understood is back to the day that they came up with this algorithm for AlphaZero, chess computers work based on all the chess games that you were feeding them, right? So you were feeding all the existing chess games in the world, and they were actually analyzing them, and they were learning. But the approach that the machine learning department of Google has is they wrote an algorithm where you only learn the algorithm, the rules of chess. And then it because they have the access to all the Google servers in the world and the processing power, they let the algorithm play against itself. And it starts playing against itself. And by doing that, it learns. And it becomes a grandmaster, I think, after 4 hours or 4 days. I mean, grandmaster level. And then they were saying, they were interviewing people, I mean, chess grandmasters who, so he crushed, first of all, AlphaZero crashed the most, I think the strongest chess computer in the world, like easy. And then AlphaZero was playing against some chess grandmasters. And I found it very interesting because it attaches to what you guys are actually doing here, how technology is becoming more and more, let's say, human. And this grandmaster said, and you were referring at one of the first days that we met that, you said that too, you said, sometime AlphaZero is making a move, which is almost human. Can you maybe explain it a little bit better? Like, what do you think about technology and computers and algorithms and deep learning?
Chess was always used as as a playground for early programmers of artificial intelligence. Because first of all, it's a complicated game, but it's also a game where you can easily measure progress. If the machine starts playing better, you will see it because it starts beating players of different levels. And also because even though complex, the game is it's not limitless. You can still keep it within reasonable limits. So in the dawn of computer chess was in the 1970s, and there were two approaches back then. So there was artificial intelligence and there was brute force. So artificial intelligence initially was doing a lot better. Because you were trying to emulate the thinking of humans. So basically programmers were using, some code that was saying, well, this type of position, try to avoid, better play this, etc. And it was not playing very well, but it was beating brute force because brute force was just too slow at the time. But as years passed, things changed, and brute force, as chips became smaller, more powerful, it became a lot stronger. And actually, for many years since the 80s, the whole artificial intelligence approach to chess was completely left, because it did not produce any interesting results. Whereas brute force was, consistently improving up until the day when Deep Blue, the IBM computer, beat Kasparov in a match. Even though at the time the computer was a strong player, but Kasparov sort of, outpsyched himself in a way. I think he shouldn't have lost that match, but still, he lost that match.
It was end of the 90s, no? 1997.
Yeah, 97, yes. And so at the time, Deep Blue was calculating 200 million positions a second. I remember Bill Gates' comment at the time was, people are asking me how the machine is able to beat the world champion. Actually, I don't understand how a human can play against a machine that calculates 200 million positions a second. Well, of course, 200 million positions is impressive, but out of this, 99.999% is rubbish.
Yeah.
It's just rote calculating. And the machine doesn't choose what it calculates. It just calculates everything possible. And since the game is very complicated, it produces a good result, but not, chess players are still able to compete with the machine. And now fast forward to today, artificial intelligence is back. And actually what it does is absolutely nothing short of amazing. So what you said is correct. The DeepMind team has devised an algorithm where it only teaches the rules of the game, nothing else, no other prior knowledge, whereas other computers used to have huge libraries of games played in the history of chess that they would use, etc. Nothing there, just the rules of the game.
The basic rules.
Yes, just how to move the pieces, nothing else. And then that program, so it's called AlphaZero, is playing itself, hundreds, thousands of times, nonstop. With the difference that there's machine learning. So after each game, it sort of figuratively, picks a notebook and says, black made a mistake on that move. This is bad, not repeat. Next time we do something different. And with every game, it improves, constantly. Yeah. And the result is just astounding. So after, you're right, after something like maybe, I don't remember exactly, I think 10 hours, it plays grandmaster level. After 3 days, it plays world champion level. And basically, the match that was organized was between AlphaZero and the best chess computer, sort of traditional chess computer.
Stockfish, no?
Stockfish.
Yeah.
And Stockfish is so strong that even the best human player is not able to play against it.
Yeah.
And AlphaZero easily won, like 75% of the games.
But that is scary, no?
And what is incredible is that in some games, actually many games, AlphaZero was playing like a human. What I mean by that is that the way computers play chess is very efficient but very ugly usually. There's no aesthetic sense to it. I mean, the beauty of the game is lost in the machines normally. And so what it does is that, for example, it would take a pawn and then just hang on to it for like, I don't know, 25 moves, find the best defense, and then eventually promote that pawn and win the game. Okay, sort of not an exciting way of playing. Whereas AlphaZero was actually sacrificing pawns for long-term, positional pressure. Fantastic cooperation and harmony between the pieces, something which as a human player you always strive for. And it was making moves that are, just beautiful to watch. And sometimes you just have the feeling that if a human player could play ideally, that's how a human player would play. If you like to think of God in man's image, you would think that, well, this is how God would play chess.
But is it not scary? I mean, yes, chess is I think it's a very, very complicated game, but at least it's a game. So you can, as a machine or as an algorithm, you can master it. But if a machine is now able, based on the artificial intelligence, to actually play as beautiful or as human as a human being, what will come in the next 10 years? So I'm thinking about literature, I'm thinking about composing music, I'm thinking about, do you think that the machines or artificial intelligence will be one day coming that far that, because you could give them the 26 letters of the language and the main principles of a language and let them go. And they can come up with a literature better than Shakespeare. Do you think it's possible, or is it science fiction?
No, I think in many ways it is already happening. I know that there is some music composition by computers, which sometimes people have trouble recognizing was composed by a machine. In terms of literature, well, literature is also, there has to be substance, not just form, right? Yeah. So it can be a beautiful set of words, but if it doesn't really relate to any human experience, then it's not going to be that interesting. So I would say the human experience still remains something challenging for machines, because the root of human experience are emotions, and emotions are something really weird for computers. They're just useless, aren't they? And so, yeah, I think we're moving into a new world where frontiers keep getting pushed back, and so it's a very interesting time, but it's also a time where man's position in all of this has to be, human position has to be thought of differently.
But are you scared of it? I mean, as a person, or do you think it's a good thing that it's happening?
I don't think you should be scared of it, because it's just inevitable. That's just the way it goes. And so, just as the sun rises in the morning, so technology advances, and so you just have to find your place in it.
I'm a little bit scared. No, but it's maybe a good thing. The question is, you just said like 5 minutes ago, the beauty of the game, right? What is the beauty of the game chess for you? What is the magic or the beauty of it? Where you say it's a masterpiece? I mean, it's something that happened which is so beautiful to look at again, to analyze it again. It's a masterpiece, like a Picasso painting, where you say, wow, that was a move, that was a game, was the total beauty of the game. How would you describe that?
Well, I would say that for me, the definition of a beautiful move in chess is a move which is, ideally the best move in the position from, the point of view of the correctness. Okay? The only right solution. Secondly, it's very hard to find. And thirdly, is paradoxical. It has to be something which is reverses the usual way you would play. So that's why sacrifices are usually, conduct beautiful games, because you sacrifice a strong piece to have a smaller piece deliver checkmate at the end. Okay, something, or something which is also beautiful in chess is when you have a raging attack, and the final move is done by playing something very quiet, just at the end, like a pause in a symphony, right? Just before the final thing happens, and that quiet move is what decides the whole thing. So basically, when you have this sort of feeling of triumph of mind over matter, this is when chess becomes beautiful art. You can find something like that also in mathematics, for example. Obviously, there are some very elegant solutions in mathematics where something very complicated suddenly can be reduced to something seemingly simple, very compact.
What is if you have to pick one game in the history of chess, and you can include some of games that you played for sure, is there one game where you say that is the game, the masterpiece, or the game of the last, I don't know, 1,000 years? Is one game where you said, if an alien comes to the world, right, and I don't want to explain him the game of chess, but I want to just give him the feeling of how beautiful and how magical this game can be. Which game would you pick? Is there one or maybe three that you would pick? Maybe I don't know.
There would be two positions, two games, that immediately come to mind. Of course, it would be better if I had a chessboard to show them, but
we can. Do we have a chessboard here? No.
We'll find a way to maybe afterwards show it. But just to describe it, so one game was played between Topalov and Shirov. And it's an endgame, so Black has a material advantage, but it's hard to win because it's bishop. I mean, bishops of opposite color. But okay, just to keep it simple, it's sort of a position where usually the defending side is able to draw. And what Black does, in that case Shirov, is put a bishop on, to be taken by a pawn on an empty square, not even taking another pawn, just to open a route for his king and win a crucial tempo. So that's one game, which is, I think it's been recognized by many players as the most incredible move of all time.
Really?
Yes.
But did he know what he's doing, or was it desperation? No. Because you say no, because these guys are grandmasters. No, I mean they are the top of the top.
Yes.
So, and actually based on the experience that you just explained, and based on analytical talent that you have, you should realize, as you just explained, because I have only the bishops and I have a specific pawn structure, no matter what I will do, will end up to a draw or whatever, right? That is what your brain would say.
Yeah.
Where I want to make a point is how much is of the beauty is intuition that you cannot, even if you would learn it 18 hours a day, there is a moment, and that refers also to life and to the business world, when something happens out of the blue, maybe it's in your unconsciousness, which creates this magical moment. How much of that was conscious and he was really understanding what he was doing? Or was it something that he said, I don't know, okay, fuck it, let's play this. And if I lose, I lose. Or if it's getting crazy, it's crazy. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, all the doors open and the holy light comes in and you see something which nobody else ever saw before. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I'm trying to bring the creative process into it a little bit, but please explain, sorry.
Yeah, so in this particular case, it's one of those positions which is not that complicated in the sense that once you see the move, then everything makes sense. So suddenly he knew what he was doing.
Okay.
But just to think of that idea is incredibly difficult because it's completely off the charts. I mean, it looks like like a beginner's move. Someone who just learned the rules of chess, doesn't know how to play, would play such a move. But anyone with any understanding of the game would never think of such a move. And so the reason why it's so beautiful is because all the other sensible moves, they don't lead to a win, they only lead to a draw. And this is absolutely the only way to win the game. So this is one candidate, and the other is a game which was played between Short and Timon. And in that game, basically White has a dominating position, but everything is defended just enough by Black. Okay, and so it's hard to find the breaking idea. What really will carry the day. And what Short came up with is just an incredible idea, was just to march with his king from G1, the back rank, all the way to H6, on a board
all
full, yeah, all over the board, on a board full of heavy pieces with the queens on both sides. Also something you'd never think of.
Wow.
And actually, it was so amazing that Timman only understood what was happening when he was only 2 squares away from reaching the final destination, because his mind just couldn't, process that he was actually moving the king, not just to prepare for an ending, but actually to deliver checkmate by going all the way, under enemy 5.
Wow.
So yeah, these are 2 brilliant games.
Cool. We were discussing that as we met also, and you said you're so happy that it's happening. Because of the pandemic and the lockdown, a lot of people started to actually reconsider chess again, or discover it in a new way. And then Queen's Gambit happened on Netflix, which gave a huge boost to how the people see chess, and a lot of people starting to play chess again. So how do you see that? Because as you said, chess was always more like a sophisticated intellectual sport, not again mass sport. And now more and more people are going into chess, and more people like to actually play it, like to look at it. There are amazing YouTube channels happening. A lot of people are talking about chess on all the different levels. How do you see that? I mean, it's a great thing to see it, no?
Yeah, well, I think what is first of all, chess is perhaps the only sport which you can practice online. Not just watch, but actually play yourself. It's hard to play tennis online.
Yeah.
Right? So it has produced, I mean, all that you described, the pandemic and this Netflix very, very popular show, has reminded people that there is this game which is really fun, exciting, and easy to play from home. And so, yes, now we have even more people playing chess all over the world. And what I find interesting is that the chess landscape is changing. And it goes along with what is happening in the world generally. The world becomes more open. And so up until the 90s, the best players, maybe save a couple, were all from the Soviet Union, because all the knowledge was amassed there. As I explained, I learned Russian for that. And then as Soviet Union exploded, then you had players traveling all over the world. Many of these former Soviet players, going to live in various countries in the US, Western Europe. And so you saw players emerging from various countries. Up until the day when you had suddenly a player like Vishy Anand, for example, coming from India. And there was no strong player in India at the time, none at all. But he just happened to meet a Soviet trainer there, and he was this incredibly talented kid. And so all of a sudden you saw players emerging, out of unlikely places in chess terms. And then the computer appeared, and the chess databases, and the ability to play online. And so now there is no particular advantage in living in Moscow anymore. You can live anywhere in the world and play with anybody and train with anybody. So it's made the game, much more open to anyone. And so, the latest example of this is Magnus Carlsen, the current world champion, coming from Norway. Small country, practically no chess tradition, but he just happened to like the game. He played with a few players, traveled to a few tournaments, and with the help of computers, didn't need to have, the famed Soviet trainer by his side to make progress. He could do it almost all on his own.
Cool.
So before chess was an exclusive club. Strong players. For example, there's this famous story of Jose Raul Capablanca, world champion
from Cuba.
From Cuba, yes. If any of you go to Cuba, you should visit the Capablanca Chess Club, because Capablanca is the national hero. He's the only Cuban world champion there was in the history of chess. Actually, his parents came from Spain and from Catalonia.
Oh, wow.
His mother was Catalan. So anyway, Capablanca was a fantastic player. He was considered the Mozart of chess because he learned the game just by watching his father play chess. And he was a wonder kid. I mean, he was at 10 years old, he was very strong already, champion of Cuba already at 10. And basically he'd been in the game forever and dominating and unbeatable. I mean, for 10 years, he didn't lose a single game. And then he was interviewed by a journalist in Russia. who asked him, but do you think it's possible that, for example, in Russia, which is a big country, people love chess, that out of nowhere could appear a genius and beat everybody? Do you think it's possible?
And that was when?
That was in the 20s. No, that was in the 30s, 1930s.
1930s.
Yes.
Okay. So almost 80 years ago.
Yeah.
19 years.
19 years ago, yeah. So Capablanca said, well, it's funny you asked me this question. I actually have a story to tell you. Here in Moscow, a few years back in the 1920s, I came to play tournaments, and it was, a tournament where all the best players were playing. I was world champion, and then it was Lasker, the world champion before me, and Alekhine, the one who became world champion later on by beating me. We were all playing in that tournament. And after one of the games, I was approached by a local guy, never met before, and he said, oh, Mr. World Champion, I have devised this fantastic opening, and it wins by force for white in under 30 moves. Unstoppable. And I said, all right, sure, yeah. You just play some tournaments and, show it to other people, whatever. But he kept insisting, so, I didn't know how to get rid of him. So eventually I said, all right, well, let's sit down. You show me what you have. And so he showed his opening, first game, and after 25 moves, I was in lost position. Capablanca is telling the journalist. Okay, second game, this time I was a bit more concentrated. Again, 25 moves, I was done. And so I got a little frustrated, and I called my friend Lasker, and I said, look, Emmanuel, I have some strange guy here, and he found some interesting opening. Can we come up to your room and he shows you? Yeah, sure, no problem. So we went to Lasker's suite at the hotel, and Lasker was a master of defense. And again, in 25 moves, Lasker was finished. And game after game, this unknown guy kept beating Lasker. And so we called Alekhine and said, well, Alekhine, it's one of your countrymen here showing something really, really strange. Can you come over? And Alekhine came, Alekhine, master of attack. We thought maybe he would beat him. Same thing, kept losing game after game. And then Capablanca pauses. And the journalist goes, so what happened after that? Oh, we killed him, of course. What else could we do?
Right.
So what actually Capablanca was saying in that story is that, chess is such a, exclusive club that you cannot have a strong player pop out of nowhere. Because in order to become that strong, you need to play with other strong players. Someone will find out about you at some point or another. But now this can happen. I mean, not literally like that, but still.
But do you think? I mean, let's looking at it in a different from a different light. Do you think it's a good thing that technology and the computer processing power is there, and I can actually access to every database and every possible game and every opening that was existing? Or do you think it's a bad thing because it kind of destroys a little bit the naivety and the freshness of the game? Because if everybody, and that's the reason I'm saying, if everybody can learn everything about the game, we can assume that, right? So if I have the right computer and the right processor and the right connection, and I would dedicate myself, and I'm a little bit talented. Let's say I'm a little bit talented. I could actually master and learn almost the most important principles of the game, but also how to be successful in the game. Is it a right assumption? Yes or no?
No.
Okay.
No, because chess is.
That's the reason I'm shit. Okay, go on. Sorry.
Chess is so much more than just memorizing. Because there's a number of things that are known, but there is much more that is unknown. And every single game of chess produces something new. I mean, unless two players do it on purpose, it's impossible to replay exactly the game that two other players have played before, because there are just too many possibilities. But at some point, someone will do something different, and you will be in new territory.
No, but because I was so impressed by you the other day we met, because you said, you were telling, because we were talking about Bobby Fischer, and then you said you met him, and then you said something that you were coming to his room and there was a chessboard and there were pieces on the board, and by just looking at it for 1 second, you knew exactly what was the position of which game played by whom, which is an amazing ability. So you have this memorizing talent in your head, so maybe not only related to chess, but maybe related to everything which has something with visual kind of recognition, that you can immediately realize and remember what it is, no? It's amazing.
I mean,
you can still do it, no?
Memory is a tricky thing. So for things where you invest a lot of time and energy, it goes very deep, and you can remember lots of things for many years. But it's because I think you. I mean, I'm not a neurologist, but I think that specifically you carve these paths between your neurons, in the brain that are related to the specific area, and so it's all deeply researched there. But it doesn't necessarily apply in the same way to other things. So I would say chess players tend to have a very good.
For example, are you good in the game of memory? Memory, the game where you play with the kids, where you have to turn around the two same pictures?
Yes.
It's memory, no? Yeah. Are you good in it? You should be kicking the ass of everybody, no? Because you remember immediately, maybe, exactly which card is which picture at the beginning of the game.
I think I'm probably just as good as any kid, but if the cards had chess positions on it, yes, I might be better.
Oh, well, okay. So
what I'm saying is that there's specific pieces of human knowledge that if you research them deep enough, you really have them ingrained in your brain. For example, how can you easily recognize if a strong player has started playing when he was under 8 years old, or if it was later? The easiest test is how fluent he is in blindfold chess. So if
blindfold chess, can you explain what it is?
Blindfold chess is playing the game without any border pieces in your head, basically. So if we were to play blindfold chess with each other, I would say, well, my first move as white, I play e4. What do you play? You say e5, that's knight f3, you play knight c6.
So you play it in your head?
Yeah. So just visualizing the whole board and the whole game in your mind.
But how do you then remember which piece is standing where?
You just do. I mean, this is
Lana, that is what for you. You should not start with normal chess. Here, blindfold chess. But that is unbelievable.
But this is something which.
But but blindfold chess. So you played for the whole duration of the game. So it's 1.5 hours usually, or what? What is a normal chess game in terms of duration of a normal game?
Well, in normal tournaments, you don't play blindfold.
But if you would play blindfold, you would play it for.
But actually, there used to be a tournament in Monaco every year where we played only blind. Well, there was one game which was played in rapid, and then the next game in blindfold.
Wow.
I remember this is one of my most terrible headaches ever, because I was playing a game so the game you were given 25 minutes for the entire game and 10 seconds per move. Okay, so normally a game would last roughly an hour, approximately, maybe a little more.
How many moves do you have in a game?
Well, that game lasted 130 moves.
But wait a second. So just for a normal brain like me, just to imagine. So after 130 moves, you know exactly in your head which pieces are left, where are they standing, what is the position, and how can you move on?
Yes.
Forward and backward.
Sure, yeah.
How is that possible?
Well, that
no,
game,
I mean,
that game
for a small
really
brain
tough.
like me. No, but how do you do that? Now, how do you learn it? I mean, okay, you grew up with it. I get it. But how can you train for something like this?
Well, I mean, you can do some specific exercises for blindfold chess, but what I'm trying to say is that if you're a strong professional player, so you dedicate a lot of time to chess, you will be a very good blindfold chess player anyway.
Automatically.
Yes, because you're just thinking about the game so much. And the thing is that when you play a game of chess, yes, you have the board in front of you, but you're still in a way playing blindfold chess because you're calculating variations. Well, you cannot move the pieces as you calculate, right? You have to calculate it in your mind. So in a way, you're already playing blindfold chess.
Yeah, like in Queen's Gambit, as Beth Hammond was always looking at the roof, and they had the chessboard, and then they moved the pieces were moving. So that was what she was calculating, no? Okay.
But the funny thing is that when you are thinking about chess and thinking of moves, you don't actually visualize the pieces even very well. I mean, you don't know if it's a piece which is made of wood or plastic or the texture of it. You don't visualize that. You just know that this thing in that particular place is a bishop standing on a black square, for example. And you just sort of have the board in your mind like that.
But are you still to have a couple of questions, because I don't know how much from a timing perspective we want to do it, because I want you guys to have the possibility to ask some questions. So I have 2 or 3 questions and then we can move on. So are you still playing chess?
Yeah, sure. Just for fun, because I mean, if I was to play a serious tournament, I wouldn't want to play, you know, much worse than I used to play. So then I would have to train, and this takes a long time. I would need to spend, you know, a few months just.
But whom are you playing against then? Friends.
Friends, yeah.
But so you will crush them usually, no? Because they are not chess grandmasters, no?
Yeah, they're grandmaster friends. So.
Okay, cool. And do you still enjoy the way it was?
I do. Actually, just last weekend, we had the World Corporate Chess Championship organized by the International Federation. And I was representing Softcombank, the bank where I'm the board of. We played okay, actually. Well, I did, played well. I won 5 games and made 1 draw out of 6 games. We didn't qualify for the final, but, still we did, did reasonably well.
Cool. Wow.
So, but yeah, just going back to this idea of blindfold chess, if someone has not, started playing the game before 8, it's really hard for them to play blindfold chess, and this is how usually you tell.
So 2 more questions, and then I will open up for you guys if you want to ask something. So, what would you say if you have to pick? Because I asked you about the most beautiful game. What would you say, who is in the history the best chess player? If you have to pick the top 3, including you.
No.
I
certainly wouldn't be part of it. No.
And why? And if you pick them the way you pick them, and explain why you think they are the best.
Well, I would definitely put Fischer in it. Bobby Fischer is this American champion I was mentioning before, and the reason why I would put him, first of all, because he was dominating, by a wide margin at his peak. He was much stronger than the rest, but also the way he achieved that objective. He was a guy who was on his own, without any training, without any teams, and yes, chess is an individual sport, but when you're training, you always have some trainers with you and people to bounce off your ideas from, and check and do it on your own entirely without computer, because we're talking about the 70s, 60s, 70s. That requires so much dedication, so much,
But the life story of Bobby Fischer is also like kind of the base storyline of Queen's Gambit, no? He just turned it around. Yeah, but sorry, go on.
You're right. Yeah. It was the character takes after Fischer, except it's a girl. So he would be in it for sure. Another player is Mikhail Tal. Mikhail Tal was this incredible player who just loved having fun playing chess. What he was doing, it was just sacrificing pieces left and right, and always creating a mess on the chessboard, because he was confident that in that mess he would somehow find his way, and the others wouldn't. And he was this player who actually he was a very small person. He was like 1.60 meters or something, fragile health, big eyes. But his presence was just frightening to many players. Players dreaded playing Tal.
They were scared.
Because they knew that he was going to take them on a wild ride. It didn't matter what opening, however solid they, started the game, he would take them into something completely crazy. They would go completely nuts trying to figure out what was happening. I mean, Tal used to say there are 2 types of sacrifices in chess: the correct ones and my sacrifices.
Right.
So definitely Tal. If I had to pick a third one, well, I would pick a player that I know really well. That's Anand, Vishy Anand, because so he was this, he is this Indian guy who just basically single-handedly, put India on the chess map, and now he's a national hero in India. Everybody knows him there.
He was a world champion too, no?
Yes, he was. He was world champion for several years. Actually, you can do the test. You go to any Indian restaurant, any place in the world. You said, Anand? Yes, of course. I've tried it myself. And Anand, comes from Chennai, and in his chess club in Chennai, there was only one board, and a lot of players wanting to play. And the rule was simple: if you won, you stayed on.
Oh wow!
If you lost, you had to go. And so, basically, natural selection worked again, and so he was winning all these games. And
you played against him too, no?
Yeah. I mean, he's slightly older than me, so sort of same generation. We played many games against each other. And what Anand always had is this incredible calculating ability. Like you would only start to think about one variation, he already had it calculated. I mean, his speed of thinking was just incredible. You know, he was famous for when he was about 15 or 16 years old, playing in tournaments, you know, playing seasoned grandmasters, you know, serious people. And at the time, the games were a bit slower, so you had 2 hours for the entire game. The grandmaster would use, you know, his full 2 hours, and he would use 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and the opponent would be in the lost position and lost on time. I mean, it was really amazing.
Wow.
So I'm thinking of him because it's probably the purest chess talent I have seen. I mean, I've heard stories about Capablanca being like this, about Morphy being like this, but you know, these are players I never got to see live. Whereas Anand is just incredible.
Wow. But so these three players are from different ages, right?
Yes.
So one hypothetical question: if they would play against each other, imagine there would be a tournament where Anand, Tal, and Fischer would play against each other. Who would win? If you have a guess, what do you think? What will happen? I mean, each one of them at their heights. So Fischer, as he won the championship, Anand, as he was the champion, and Tal, as he was the champion. If that could happen, who would win? What do you think?
I don't know. It's hard to see who would lose from them. You know?
Yeah.
You know, it's always difficult because you know, the later players, they also build their strength from previous ones.
Yeah.
If Anand was so strong, it's because he had watched so many of Tal's games and Fischer's games, and so we play chess differently than we used to also before because we know more thanks to the previous players.
Yeah.
So it's hard to compare.
It's hard to compare. And what do you think about the new generation, like Carlsen and all the other guys who are now playing at a high level? I mean, do you think they are great in what they're doing in comparison to other generations, or do you see it in a completely different context because of the technology that they have, because they have access to all the information that you guys maybe didn't have 30 years ago? So how do you see the quality of chess today among the top players?
No, chess today is played, you know, at obviously a very strong level. I think what's changed a bit is that, you know, with the advent of computers and the fact that the top players are so used to playing with them and training with them, their style of play is a bit different. So it's actually interesting because I think that has many applications outside of chess as well, which is before in chess, the game being so complex, you know, people will learn the principles of the game, the strategic principles, because these strategic principles would sort of tell you which direction to look at in complex positions. This is how you made sense of the chaos. Okay, but with the computer and all these new players, their approach is much less dogmatic. And basically, they're saying, well, if you cannot refute it, it works. And it doesn't really matter how it looks. Maybe it doesn't look very beautiful from a classical, you know, strategic point of view, but you know, if it works, it wins. And that's all I care about. And so
the beauty is suffering.
Well, it not necessarily, because sometimes they uncover some, you know, really hidden things that we didn't think were possible before. But it's just shown that all of these general principles, they're useful guidelines, but not much more than this. And I think that, you know, applies to many areas of life where we take many things for granted, but if you dig a little deeper, you realize that it's just something that was said by someone someday, published somewhere, and that's become a rule, but it's not worth much more than that.
Yeah. So my last question, because we're sitting here at Harbor Space and the whole discussion or the whole thing happened as me and Lana had this conversation. And I was saying it would be amazing in terms of the creative approach and the problem-solving approach to have chess being educated or being taught in universities. What would be your recommendation for a university like Harbor Space? How to set it up? Would you teach chess, or would you use chess as an abstract model to actually teach students strategy, problem-solving, memorization, game theory? You know what I mean? Or interaction with technology. How would you set it up? Because I think that is something that is interesting for Harbor Space to know, as maybe one of the first ones to say, actually, we can make something out of it, no? How would you recommend how something like this should happen?
Well, I think I think you need both. I think you need a part which is you know, the chess part, and so but of course people have different levels. So you will need something which is understandable enough for everyone, but also intriguing, exciting, and I'm sure this can be arranged. It's not that complicated, but I think it's essential for people to have first-hand practice of the game, because it's like reading books about chefs or reading a book about a composer. If you never get to hear their music or taste what they prepare, it's all very abstract, right? So I think this is definitely useful, and then in the process of trying yourself to master the game, you realize how complicated, but also how rich the game is. And at the same time, I think it's important to explain what are the main ideas in chess, how they came about, the history of the game, how things were discovered, because like in the sciences, the knowledge we have is a process that's been going on, for centuries. And so I think there's many useful things that come out of this.
And do you think it's a good idea if Habaspe would try to set something like this up?
I think so, and I think also it would be a differentiating factor as well, because the game of chess is played all over the world. Everybody loves it. Everybody tries it one day or the other, and it's a game which is ideally suited. Although it's a very ancient game, it was invented in the 3rd century. It's a game which is very modern and lends itself to all kinds of devices, and it doesn't matter which platform you're on, you can play chess. Yeah. So it's, what I'm saying is that chess is a universal language, and it's spoken by the entire world.
Amazing. No, I mean, that was my. So Lana, we have a job to do now. No? We have to set it up properly. No. Thank you very much. It was, for me personally, it was an honor, an amazing almost 2 hours of inspiration till now. Every time I meet you, I'm getting out and I say, fuck, I have to be better at chess. I have to be. No, but it's so inspiring to see your mind not only talking about chess, but also what I take the most is the inspiration for my life in terms of how to see things in a different way. The point that you made about being truthful to yourself, I believe in it completely. I believe if you're truthful, you will make good decisions. You will always land at the right place. You will always connect to the right people. So it also has a metaphysical level for me. No, thank you very much for the time. I mean, I'm honored.
Thank you very much.
I think Lana loved it. Now, if you guys want to, I mean, I don't know, from a timing point of view, we still have a little bit more time. If you have any questions, please use the opportunity, because again, there are only 1,000 grandmasters in the world, and I don't know when would be the next time you will see someone sitting in front of you. So use the opportunity and ask him. And again, he's straightforward and he's in an amazing brain. Thank you very much, my friend.
Thank you.
Guys?
I got the first question. Hello, my name is Vasily. We're very glad to.
He's Russian, by the way.
Yeah, I can tell. Yeah.
You play chess?
Sometimes, yeah.
Okay, cool.
I think I'm better than you, but not as better. Oh, thank you. Thank you. So my question is, what makes sense in these titles, these words that there's only like 400 people, like grandmaster and so on, or if a guy who is a beginner in code, like making this kind of like chess gamer, online gamer that can like with help of which I can beat you all guys here. Like what makes sense in these titles, and like where chess is now, because I'm not seeing the future in this. Seeing the future in kind of like robots showing like huge like games in chess that human cannot like try to be close to.
Well, I mean, performance. Well, first of all, becoming strong at chess takes a lot of time. A lot of commitment, dedication. It's not. I mean, you cannot become a grandmaster unless you spend at least 10 years, working at it. It's just the way it is. The game is just so complicated that you cannot.
Nobody is that talented, no?
Well, I mean, there's a whole volume of knowledge you need to get. Unless you know that, you cannot understand the next things, etc. So
there's no higher title than grandmaster, no?
Well, there's world champion.
But he has to be a grandmaster to become a
yes.
Champion.
So yes, you do have a lot of players online, but I can tell you that any player who plays in tournaments also plays online, and so I mean, there's no hidden geniuses out there on the internet that can beat anybody just by playing online. So, I mean, at the end of the day, all the strong players meet each other, and this is how you find out who the strong players are. And Carlsen, he didn't appear out of nowhere. I mean, from the age of 13, he was already very strong. I think he became grandmaster at 14, 13 even. So we know of him for many years already. But you're asking what is the future of chess? Well, first of all, chess, has always existed, and it's always, been a fascinating game for millions of people. So it will always exist in its original form. What has been appearing, recently are, for example, something which is maybe closer to cyber sports. So, for example, what you have now is some strong players who either play themselves or comment games which are being played online or offline. It doesn't matter, because when we play in strong tournaments, we play on boards which are electronically linked to the internet. So whenever you play a game of a move of a game, it's immediately translated to the internet instantaneously. So the whole world can follow your game basically. And so these guys are commenting on the game on Twitch, for example, and they have a huge amount of followers. So I think what is new is this sort of this entertainment part of chess, which was much more subdued before. I mean, unless you were a chess amateur, willing to go through the grinding of the games, etc. Not many people enjoy the game just like that. But now it's made easier, because you've got all these guys, commenting for everybody, and they do it in a very entertaining way. And actually, some of these players have completely stopped playing and switched full time to commentating, because they make a lot more money doing that.
Really?
Yes.
Oh wow.
Thank you.
Oh, there's a question over there.
Thanks.
Just wait for the mic.
Oh, cheers. My question, it kind of unfolds into a second question, depending on your answer. Have you ever been beaten by a computer?
Yes, many times.
Okay. Then I guess my next question, you mentioned that there's damage to the ego when you lose a game of chess. What's more damaging to the ego, losing to a computer or losing to a friend?
Well, of course, it's more damaging to lose to a human player, because still a machine is a machine, so you take it less personally. Except that it happens more often when you lose against a machine. But I would say that the reason why it's really hard playing against a machine is not only because it doesn't make any obvious mistakes. The machine doesn't play perfect moves, but the average level of its move is consistently high. Whereas a human player might make brilliant moves, but then might make a blunder all of a sudden, just because getting tired or whatever, and lose the game as a result. But what is really difficult about playing the machine is not the objective, complexity of its moves, but more the fact that the psychological part is completely absent. When you play a game of chess against a human being, you're constantly, there's a connection with your opponent. Even though we don't speak with each other, you kind of understand whether the moves you've played was something that he had seen coming or not, whether the opening that you've chosen, is comfortable or not, or if it's unusual for him. And this communication, nonverbal, is constantly ongoing, and you feed off of it. So when you play something which is daring, you look at the reaction of your opponent, and you can see whether he's sort of being affected by it or not. And so this whole thing just doesn't exist with the machine, because it doesn't care, quite simply. So that's why it's really difficult to play against the machine. Yeah.
So for some reason, I've been looking
a little bit louder, please, so they can hear it.
For some reason, I've been looking for an answer for a previous project, and the question for the project was, if I start playing, for example, mental games like puzzle for attraction, for our chess, like for strategy, if I start learning now, am I going to get better in terms of like navigation or like attention or like any of those mental skills?
Well, I think that if we talk about any complex game such as chess, it will develop a set of qualities, but over time. It's not going to happen in 2 weeks. and it's directly a function of the amount of effort you put into it. So if you spend a lot of time and really try to master, its intricacies, pretty quickly you will hit your own limits of what comes to you naturally without specific hard work. And the reason why it becomes useful is when you push these limits, further and further. And this is when you grow as a person, not only just as a player, obviously. So this is why chess is helpful in that way, because if you've spent many years practicing it and basically constantly putting yourself in question, because in order to keep progressing, well, your new you has to be stronger than today you are, right? I mean, you have to keep improving. So you something needs to change in your approach to chess, but in some ways to life as well. So that's why it's a lifelong practice. Yeah.
There's a question.
Yes, here.
Well, I'm not a chess player myself, but I take it from the conversation that there are no female chess players, female champions.
No, they are all. They're less.
Very good question.
And my following question, why do you think there are more men playing chess than women, if so?
So first of all, to give you a rough idea, so I would say that there's roughly at the top level 10 times less women than men, approximately. That's the proportion. Now, in terms of the best female players, the strongest ever is Judith Polgar. She's Hungarian, and she was one of the top 10 players in the world, and she was the only woman who ever reached such a high level. And the reason why, I think it's a combination of factors. Probably the most important of them is the social factor. What I mean by that is that in order to become very strong in chess, you need to dedicate yourself fully to it. And for many parents, it's not an occupation they view as entirely natural for a young girl. They wouldn't, they would have reservations sending their girl around the world to travel and play, especially if it's still, a sport dominated by men. So not many, girls are encouraged to spend a lot of time doing that. Some of them are, but so since the base of the pyramid is smaller than at the top, you don't have as many strong players. In my view, I've been asked sometimes if women play a different way, play chess in a different way than men. I've noticed that for some reason women are more in compromising. I mean, they don't go for compromises in games. So, for example, at the top level, you see a lot more decisive results among women than among men.
Called the bitch fight. No, maybe. I don't know. Was it appropriate? No, it wasn't. No.
I think that. It's not obvious why, but for some reason, if they decide to play, they really try to win. I mean, that's it. I mean, a lot of strong players are more careful. I mean, male players, they sort of manage their tournaments in some way. They try to think, well, this guy, maybe I'm not going to try to win every game, but I'll try to concentrate on the weaker ones or whatever. Whereas it's not like that in women's chess. But I think there's obviously no particular reason why a woman should be as strong as a man in chess, and we see some very talented young players. I think it's also a function of how much of a decent living you can have playing chess. So these things take time, but already today we see a lot more chess players, female chess players, than we did 20 years ago.
Did you, one question, addition to what you said, did you ever lose to a woman?
Yes, sure.
And how did it feel? Comparison to the machine and the man?
Well, it never feels good. But,
so you played against Judith Polgar?
Yes, yes. We played many games because she's roughly my age and she's 3 years younger. And we have an equal score. I won 3 games against her and she won 3 against me and many draws. Yeah, she was not easy to play with because she was a very gifted tactical player, with a keen eye for combinations, very quick. So always dangerous.
Okay.
Always dangerous. But once you play against an established player, it's not a problem if she's a female player. If she's well known as a strong player, it's fine. I think it was more difficult for her when she was beating players when she was younger and smaller. People would get really annoyed losing to a small girl, and she had to go through that.
Here,
Here,
first here, maybe.
first here.
And then,
Were you imagining when you were in your 20s that perhaps you would have a different career than being just in chess, like working in business, for example? And
yeah, well, actually, when I was in my 20s, I never imagined I would have a different career. Actually, I thought I was going to play chess, forever, and all my efforts were focused on trying to become the best player possible, maybe even world champion, with God's help. But that started to change as I matured. And after a while, I started thinking, it's a fascinating life, but in a way, it's also repetitive. You get to, travel to the same tournaments, get to see the same people. And suddenly, I don't know, I had an urge to try something different and, explore new things. So, yeah, eventually I understood that, you can't always postpone that decision till, too far in time. So, yeah, in my early 30s, I decided I must make the move. Somehow it happened. Yeah.
Is there anything you miss?
From my chess days? Yeah, I miss the freedom. Because when you're a chess player, you're like an artist. Basically, you're accountable to nobody else except yourself. So you travel the world, and you just you want to play this tournament or that tournament. It's a very carefree life. But after a while, it's not that important. There are things that become more important now. So. But yeah, sure. Sometimes I miss, the sort of the fun days of traveling around the world playing chess.
but you guys were going crazy. I mean, talking about having fun. So like rock and roll. I mean, when you were in a chess tournament, you were playing during the day, and then in the night, somebody said, you know what? Fuck it, let's have a party. Or was it not possible because you be always so disciplined for the next day or the next day? Or there was no fun element beside chess, no? Or was it?
Well,
you cannot talk about it.
You bet, Amir, it was possible, yes.
Yeah? Okay.
But we'd have to switch off the camera. Of course, I mean, when you travel the world, a bunch of 20-year-olds do all kinds of stuff once the game is over.
Cool. There was a question here. Sorry.
I'm interested in the difference between the efficient playstyle of a computer and the beauty of a human playstyle. And my understanding is that there's obviously the inherent difference of the psychological aspect. But is there anything more to it, or is it really only that?
You mean the difference between playing a machine and a human player?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, first of all, there's the understanding that the machine will never play, a bad move. So it means that the minute you land in a difficult position, well, you know that you're never going to win this game, basically. Maybe you might draw it if you're lucky and you hang on tight and find something, but you're never going to win it. So in itself, that's already annoying because when you play against a human player, even if you have a lost, sort of scientifically lost position, but the game is complicated enough, and you can set some clever traps, and you still have your chances, right? So it gives you more energy to keep fighting. If you're playing a machine, you know that it's futile. At best, you'll draw. That's it. So I think it's the psychological part of it is important, and in a way, it's true that human players play worse against machines than they would play against human beings for psychological reasons. Another thing is that normally the matches that they were setting up were between the best machines and the best human players among humans. But actually, there's a way of playing against machines which is different than playing against humans, because machines are programmed in a specific way. So if a chess player was to spend time with programmers and understand, their weak points, I'm pretty sure that that player would be, much more proficient in playing machines. But of course, no regular player does that because you don't play machines normally, you play other humans. But for example, in the earlier days of chess programming, one of the things that a programmer would tell the machine is that never move the pawns in front of your king. Now, after you've castled, so you put your king in safety, never move those pawns in front of your king because you weaken your king's position. It's very dangerous. And so, some tricky players understood that, and they chose specifically openings. For example, the King's Indian on the white side, where the machine actually, in that opening, black has to attack by moving pawns in front of its king because the center is closed. So that's an exceptional position where you can do that, and it's a good thing to do it. But the machine wasn't told that in this particular opening, the rules don't apply. And so for a while, until programmers caught onto it, they were able to win easily against machines just going into these types of positions. But what I'm illustrating by this is that this is not the only case. There are all kinds of blind spots in chess programming that a chess player might be able to use if he spent the time at uncovering them.
Sorry, so what would be your #1 secret to focusing just on one thing? So when you're working on chess as a career, you're only focusing on chess. But for me, for example, I focus on like 5 different projects on at once, and I can't focus on one thing. What would be your #1 secret on just focusing on?
You mean what would be the reason for me to focus on one specific thing?
Or how do you keep your mind at it once you are
and not getting distracted by other stuff?
Well, you see, in a way, I'm an advantage because when you play chess, you're used to focus all the time on the game that you're playing at that particular moment. For example, it's quite common when you play in a tournament that we play in large halls, like in theaters, for example, and there are people, public and people sitting and talking to each other. So basically, there's a lot of noise, and people, friends who would visit me at these tournaments would say, "But how do you concentrate with all this noise?" And I wouldn't even realize there was noise because once you're so immersed in your game, I don't know, something happens, but basically you shut yourself off completely, so you don't hear the noise, you don't pay attention to anything, and you just completely focus. And that's a common thing for chess players, and that's something you develop over a long practice of playing the game. So I think that I think that you just have to get into the habit of immersing yourself in the subject at hand, and once you do this, it becomes easier.
I just want to ask because we never got the answer before about what type. What type of? You was asking what type of character you were in your chess playing. Like someone is aggressive or someone is, I don't know, a different character. What's your character as a chess player? Because you seem like such a grounded, relaxed person to me. But what comes out when what's your character in chess?
He's not. He's the opposite. No, I'm joking. I'm joking.
Well, I mean,
like you, what they say about you.
I would say that my style when it works is a bit like a steamroller basically. So I just try to play in a way that I foresee every possible defense and I just crush it basically. So sort of sense of inevitability basically. So that's my way of playing the game. But obviously it doesn't always work like this. So I think there's some weaknesses in my character which probably prevented me from being even stronger than I was, and it's never easy to reflect on that by yourself, but I would say that maybe being a bit too predictable sometimes because of this style that I was mentioning, and so my way of playing is extremely logical. Grounded is a good word, yes. Grounded in facts and reality and everything, and just moving on from there, step by step. And sometimes you need to do it differently to be more, more unpredictable to your opponents. I remember I had a discussion once with Vladimir Kramnik. So in chess, we have a lot of clubs, and we have a lot of club competitions. So every club, hires a group of players, and just like in football, you have these, foreign players who get contracted by the club to play for them. And one of the most important championships is the Bundesliga, so the German club championship, like in football.
The chess Bundesliga.
Yeah, the chess Bundesliga. And chess is hugely popular, especially at the amateur level in Germany. So you have lots of clubs. And so, I would play.
I have one question to that. I'm coming back. Sorry, go on.
And so many professional chess players play a lot of club matches because it's a recurring stream of income, and it's fun. And so I was playing in Germany for many years, and I had some problems with German players because I found them very gritty and tough to beat, and and I saw that Vladimir was just cruising through these matches. I mean, he would have a party the whole night and then wake up in the morning and play with his left hand, as they say in Russian, and then just win easily. And I asked him, how do you do it? I mean, this guy's not so bad. I mean, they know a lot of chess opening theory, and they're quite serious, etc. But these German players, they're so predictable. And once he said that to me, I realized that it's true. I just had to, switch my way of playing and do something which was for me unnatural, but just do something really strange. And it worked because it got them so puzzled. Why is he doing this? Well, this is not supposed to happen. And then, then I got them out of their comfort zone, and it became, a lot easier.
So basically, you're saying not to be too predictable.
Yes.
Yeah. And my other question is there a difference between playing left-handed opponents to right-handed opponents?
There is only a difference if you play, lightning speed chess. So it's called blitz chess. And typically the clock that we use, the chess clock, is usually put on the right-hand side for the white player. Because as white, you're supposed to have this little advantage. So, being right-handed is, you make your move faster if the clock is a few centimeters closer to you in that sense, right? But if you're left-handed, it's not a problem because you're on the same side. So, I mean, it happened, very few times in my career where being I'm left-handed myself, actually.
I'm too.
When being left-handed was good because, when in a split second, you can make a move a little bit faster than your opponents. But okay, that's not a big deal, obviously.
Not a big deal.
No. Well, unless you associate being left-handed with a different organization of your brain, etc. But that's a different story.
Yeah.
My question is about the art of learning in the context of chess, something that is infinite. How do you approach learning something that is theoretically infinite? That's the first question. And second is, what are the fundamental principles of chess?
Oh, that's a big question. Well, so the art of learning is, first of all, as if you want to be a good chess player, you have to be a permanent learner. I mean, when I say that, I mean that even the world champion every day checks on the latest games and sees if someone has invented something he'd never seen before. And that always happens. Some detail here, some nuance here. So it's a never-ending process. And as a top player, but that's true of any field. If you want to be really good at the top of your game, you have to be constantly learning. So that's clear. And the chess player is used to that. Now, regarding the principles of chess, well, I'm going to stick with the basic ones. Otherwise, it's going to be you won't be out of this room for many hours. So the basic principle in the opening is that you should occupy or control the center. You should develop your pieces, and you should put your king into safety. And that's three sound principles to start a game from a good position.
Can you repeat again?
Yeah, so so the first commandment is try to occupy or control the center. So the center is these four squares: e4, e5, d4, d5, center of the board.
But why?
Well, because from the center you're actually in an ideal position to go to the king side or queen side. So you have more flexibility.
Yeah.
And if you control the center, you affect other parts of the board.
Okay.
Then the second is to develop your pieces. So don't move with your queen, from the second move and try to, catch some whatever pawns or whatever, because the queen is the most valuable piece. So whenever it's attacked, it has to retreat. So you lose a lot of time. So you should develop your, minor pieces, your knight, your bishop. And the third thing is to put your king to safety. So basically castle, reasonably early, like before the 20th move.
What's been your biggest learning from playing chess?
Can you just repeat the question because the microphone?
Sorry?
Can you repeat the question?
Oh, yes. So your question is, what was my biggest learning from chess? Well, I mean, I think what I learned really from chess is who I was, quite simply. Because when you invest so much of yourself into something like this, into a discipline, into you constantly, as I said, get to fight with your own, limits and problems and everything, and so you constantly have to work on them. And so by testing myself in all these tournaments, and how I would react after tough blows or bad losses, etc. This is where you get to build a character, and this is how you know what you're capable of under stress. So for me, this has been I guess the most important learning.
There is another question here and then one here.
And I'm not sure I would have been able to know that much about myself, but I don't play chess.
Kind of a follow-up on that then, and I hope it's not too personal then, but in learning who you are, what was the hardest lesson that you learned?
Well, the hardest lesson, I think the hardest lesson is that sometimes I tended to function in a way that I like to have, specific rules about how to do things. And I was very good at convincing myself that some things needed to be done a specific way. And I found out that this is not a good thing. I can give you an example. So when I was 21, I qualified for the first time for the candidates tournament, candidates matches. And it means the last 16 players in the world, playing for the world title. And I was playing against this player, Jan Timman, who probably you remember. He used to be a very strong player. He was in the top 3. But he was already past his prime, and I thought I had my chances to beat him in a match. And the match was quite long. It was 8 games. And I can't really remember why, but I somehow convinced myself that I should play a specific set of openings where we tend to go to the end game more quickly. And I thought Timman was this sort of, player who likes complicated positions. We go to the ending, then I might be able to be better than him. And that was not a good approach. Actually, it was not a good approach, and I should have felt that from the first game actually. And I was too stubborn. I just stuck with that, and I lost the match eventually. It was a closely contested match, but I lost it. And the lesson was that you shouldn't go into something as complex as a match with one specific idea of how it's going to run, because things will happen that you haven't seen before, that you hadn't expected, including about your own abilities, not to mention what your opponent's capable of. So I think it's very important to basically not just to keep an open mind, but to realize that we constantly operate under biases all the time. And so sometimes you really should be able to question them and preferably even get rid of them. And in this match, my bias was that this is a player who has a reputation for being good at attacking, and so he's going to be bored to death if we go for endings. The problem is that I also like complicated positions, and so I was also playing against myself in a way. So yeah, that was my learning from that match.
But that is also interesting when it comes to life. Because as you just said, you cannot plan anything. Because if you try to plan it, it will happen anyway, differently than what you're expecting, especially at the high level chess that you're playing. Because yeah, you can play a chess game, a chess strategy against somebody like me, and you beat me in 15 moves because I'm a really bad piece of shit. But if you are playing against a grandmaster the same level, you cannot plan anything because every plan that you make will be counterattacked by a different plan, which makes your plan obsolete, no? Like Mike Tyson, the boxer, you know Mike Tyson? Mm-hmm. Mike Tyson said this amazing quote, everybody has a plan till they get punched in their face. No, but that's true. And it's true for boxing because they are saying boxing is a lot like chess because it's about movement, psychology and everything. But I think on the highest level of chess, you cannot plan it. I mean, you cannot plan the whole thing, right? You can have an idea and then you start approaching it, then you realize, oh, fuck, it doesn't work. Now I have to come up with something different, which reminds me a lot about life. Because a lot of people tend to plan life, and then they realize very fast that you cannot plan it because it happens completely differently, no?
Well, life happens while you're busy making plans.
Here we go. No, but I like the Mike Tyson quote. Everybody has a plan till they got punched in their face.
And that's certainly true in chess. Certainly true in chess, yeah. No, I agree. I agree that life and even chess is too complex to plan. That much ahead. But it sure helps if you think a lot about it, because if you think about what might happen when something similar happens, you're ready because you will have thought of something which is
okay.
And by the way, this is why a grandmaster is better than an amateur, stronger than an amateur player, not because of his sheer calculating capacities or whatever, just because a grandmaster has seen a lot of different patterns over his career and is able to recognize in any position what are the 2-3 dominating ideas of that position. Even though he's never seen that particular position before, he just seen so many of them with similar motives, similar patterns that he knows that probably the game is going to be decided somewhere around here. Okay? So that's why it's important to think about what can happen because you're always ready.
So there was here a question.
Hello, I want to ask some questions on behalf of my friend. He is candidate for Mastera Sporta back in Kazakhstan. He has like a rating of 1900 on chess.com, and he is 17 years old. He has 2 questions. Like, first question is, what are the most stable openings right now in the chess world for both colors? And he
stable.
What?
Did you say stable?
Yeah, most stable openings in chess world right now. And the second question is, what should he do since he has not achieved like the astounding results in the chess for his age, but he loves the game a lot and he just doesn't know what to do right now because he's choosing between the university or spending his life with chess.
Mm-hmm. Well, so in terms of openings, I mean, it's hard to call an opening stable in the sense that, as I mentioned, every day new games are played in every opening, and so some new ideas happen. But if what he meant by that is, let's say, especially maybe on the black side, have an opening which is strong defensively. There are a bunch of openings like the Petrov defense is called in English. It's Ruskaya Partia in Russian. Against e4, but I could give you a number of names, but it really depends on what he really likes to play, his style, and I think what really is more important is what opening suits his personality best, because then he will be in his element, and he will, even what he doesn't know, he might be able to invent over the board because it is something that he feels good in, and it may be that his chess style is actually not as defensive as he might think, at least from the question I'm hearing. So I think it's very important. For example, in my case, when I was a kid, my father, who was my first chess teacher, showed me against e4, the main move, he showed me the French defense. Not because he was being patriotic, but because he thought that this was an opening which is rare among kids, and that if I kept playing it, I would gain more experience and I would defeat my other child opponents easier, and it was true, and I because it's a close type of position, it's a little unusual, and yeah, it's true that kids didn't know what to do with it. But as I grew up, I kept playing it. I realized it didn't suit my style at all. And at some point I just switched and I moved to the Sicilian defense, which is much more, counter-attacking and more aggressive, and suited me a lot better. But it took me a few years to realize that. And the other question was that, what can you do with chess? Well, I mean, if at 17 he is at the level you're mentioning, I mean, it's not going to be easy for him to make a living purely as a player, because that means that you need to, live off of your winnings in tournaments. You need to win tournaments. You need to, and that's not easy. So maybe he would like to be a trainer, for example. That's one way. He could be a chess commentator, as I mentioned previously, because you got public for chess of all levels, and the level that you're mentioning is good enough to explain chess in an interesting way to a large amount of people. So if he's inclined to that, it could be that as well. And he could also be involved in chess, at the level of a federation, for example, because a lot of people are involved in chess, organizing tournaments, heading national federations, organizing chess schools, and that's a great way to be in the game as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, Amir, should we take the last questions?
Here's a question.
Yeah, she's right there.
So Joël, thank you so much, first of all, for your time and coming and sharing your experience with us. So I have, well, it's more of a curiosity question. Do you know actually how many plays did you win and how many did you lose? Are you counting them or are you tracking them? And my second question, that's also a curiosity question, would be, who was the strongest player that you think that you played against? I mean, even if you lost or won, but
Me.
Obviously.
Joking.
We haven't played yet. We haven't played yet.
And that's not a good idea to play against me.
So regarding the games won and lost, no, I don't keep track of them, but I don't need to, because now we have chess databases and I can just enter my name and it sorts out all the games which have been played in official tournaments. Maybe it'll miss some of the local tournaments when I was 10 years old or something, but other than that, all my official games will be there, so the computer will tell me. But what I do keep track of is my personal score against top players that I used to play with. So for example, I have a positive score against Kasparov. I beat him twice, he beat me once, and we made 7 draws in 10 games. And against Rudy Polgar, as I mentioned, I remember that we still have an even score. And same thing for many other players. The player I played most games against is Karpov, Anatoly Karpov, so the world champion before Kasparov. I must have played more than 70 games in my career against him. His score is positive against me, but I did manage to win quite a few games. And actually that ties into your next question, which is, who is the most strongest player that I've ever played? Well, as I mentioned, I've played all of them actually. I've played all the world champions ever since, I think, Smyslov I didn't play. From Tal onwards, I played all of them. And so it's impossible to say who is strongest. I mean, it doesn't make much sense for me to say that, Karpov is stronger than Anand or whatever. I mean, different generations, etc. But I can tell you which player from those I played against probably impressed me most, and that's precisely Karpov. And the reason why it's Karpov is because in the case of all the other top players, you get what they do. I mean, you understand. Maybe sometimes you get it too late, but still you understand what they're doing. In the case of Karpov, he was playing moves that even after you'd lost the game, even after a month, you still didn't understand why he played that move.
But did he know why?
Yeah, of course he did, but he wouldn't tell.
Okay.
And the thing is with Karpov is that he's got this incredible, peculiar talent of his own brand of chess. And what it boils down to is he's not trying to beat you. He's trying to prevent you from beating him. And so his entire way of playing is based on prophylaxis.
So it's catenaccio in chess. Football,
yes,
catenaccio,
yes. Yeah.
the Italian way of, we don't give a shit if you score a goal, we make sure that we are not getting a goal. It's kind of the catenaccio of chess. No?
Yeah, but it's more subtle than that.
Okay.
Vitamin D against
It's more subtle than
coronavirus.
that. Sorry?
Vitamin D against coronavirus. No, I'm just joking.
Well, it works better than that. And so what he would do is sometimes he would foresee what your idea was, and he would purposely prevent it. But that I can still get, okay? But sometimes he would play moves that he had no way of knowing would come in useful, but they did, like, I don't know, 15, 20 moves later.
Really?
Yeah, just like a little pawn move here that, at the time he played it, seemed completely innocuous. But then in an ending, 25 moves later, that move, decides everything. And so it's this incredible, feeling of the game, intuition of the game that, it's impossible to explain it. And I'm not sure he could explain it himself. He knows why he does this, but
that is intuition, no?
Yes, and that is his own special talent of playing the game. And so the trouble with Karpov is that he making all these moves, and after each of them, you were wondering, what the hell is he doing? Why is he playing this move? And why haven't I seen it again before? So he was a very tough player to play against.
Thank you so much.
One last question, maybe here.
Last question.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much. I think we heard a lot about the chess today, that this is a beautiful, very interesting game that can develop a lot of things in personalities. So I want to ask you, like, chess is still the sport, and each professional sport, it has a big impact on people. And for example, professional sportsmen, they had a lot of traumas, they had a lot of physical and also psychological deformations. So what can you say about the chess? What is the other side of this game? Like also physical and psychological deformations, some maybe traumas with arms, I don't know.
Well, it's an interesting question. I never got that question before. Well, actually, so sort of the professional hazards of being a chess player. Well, obviously you never get hurt physically, I mean, but you sometimes you get affected. For example, especially if you've lost a game that you were winning, something which is especially frustrating, and if it was important, with high stakes, that position, that key position, would turn in your mind like for days and days.
It's like a separation, no? When you separate from somebody, and you have like the cinema in your head all the time. It's kind of.
Yeah, I mean, it's really obsessive. So you have this position that you cannot get rid of, and it doesn't matter whether you're sleeping, whether you're eating, whether you're walking. It goes on, in a part of your mind. And so, yeah, that's one of the things that chess, it really gets you in the sense that if you dive deep in it, it's not easy to abstract yourself from it. On the positive side of that, I've had many experiences where, for example, I would have a tough problem to solve in an opening, an important position that I couldn't solve, and I would sleep over it, and then the next morning, bam, the solution would appear in my mind. Even though I had no recollection of actively thinking about it during my sleep, but somehow the brain keeps working.
Yeah.
And so this happens sometimes. But I think the deepest scars of a professional player are the emotional ones, and the ones that missed opportunities, games that could have been great and ended up not being so great. So yeah, this is this. I mean, as I said, there are few things which bruise your ego more than losing a game of chess. And so when tournaments go bad, this is a really difficult place to be. I had that experience myself, fortunately not too many times, but tournaments where everything went wrong, just losing game after game, and you try hard, you think you do your best, but still just doesn't click, doesn't work. Always a move late. And this is really a test of a test of strength, because these are not easy. Some players have been broken by that. They used to have fantastic results, and then 1 or 2 bad tournaments, and they still played okay, but they were never the same.
Yeah. I mean, I know about Bobby Fischer, who went insane at the end of his life. And one of the major things was that he was only spending his majority of his life with chess. At the end of his life, he went banana, no? I mean, he started to say some stupid things and even if against chess. So he went completely insane at the end, no? Almost.
Yeah, well,
But that is like the exception. But there were some other players who were kind of over the edge at the end of their lives, no?
Well, I think that chess it requires a lot of self-control, a lot of and it's emotionally it's a tough game. Also because in more physical sports you can express that. You can shout, you can whatever, and you're not alone. I mean, if obviously if it's a team competition, but in sports like boxing, you're exhausted, you're drained of your emotions. In chess, you keep it all inside. You can't show it, and so sometimes it eats you a little bit, because at the end of the game, you're not going to stand on your chess table and shout
or dance.
Well, you can do it once, but the organizer might not invite you back. So it means that it stays inside of you. But still, you got to keep. That's what I was in the three fundamental qualities I mentioned that chess developed. Resilience. Resilience is important.
Cool. So I think we had the last question, right? So thank you very much again for your time. It was amazing. Anything else that you want to comment on it? No, we are fine, no?
We have 3, but we have 2
So-
downstairs.
Cool.
If you guys want to hang
Sounds
out.
good.
That's good. Thank you very much. Amazing, my friend. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Pizza is coming.
Amazing.
Amazing. It was amazing. Yeah. Oh my God. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Good, no?
Yeah. Let's go downstairs. Let's have a.
Yeah, sure.
Downstairs is good. I can smoke. Where are we going?
First floor.
I'm not the cafeteria.
No, where the kitchen is.